Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and today we have an interview. Our regularly scheduled program will come to you Sunday because Saturday, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, we're going to go live, and we're captioning this Ask Scott. Ask me anything. Ask me a question. We'll talk about it, and we'll see what the questions are. Maybe the best question of the day, we'll get a Crime Talk mug. Today, though, we have an interview that we're doing with J for Justice. J for Justice has her own YouTube channel, and she does a great job. She is a true crime aficionado, and just the other day, literally while she was on the air, she was breaking news. We thought it'd be great to talk with her. She agreed. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Have a great day. We are talking with Jay, and Jay is for Justice is her YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, taking the time to talk with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
No, this is exciting stuff. You're doing good work. Tell me a little bit about your podcast and your channel and how it got started. What got you interested in true crime?
Oh, well, you're going to love to hear this one, but it's Chris Watts.
Okay.
So it was the Chris Watts case for sure. I think Chris Watts changed the way that we look at crime on social media. I think it was just something we had never seen before. I started out doing a podcast that was just recorded only. I had a partner. Things didn't work out, so I moved on doing my own thing. Started my YouTube channel in early December of 2018.
Okay.
Right around the time when the discovery came out for Chris Watts.
Yeah.
And it just blew up from there. Like, it was crazy. I think 12,000 subscribers in maybe 2 weeks, if that.
Well, I had a very similar experience. I had done a couple of little podcasts, didn't really know what to do with it. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should, comment on this Chris Watts case." And I'm like, man, nobody wants to hear what I have to say about anything. And literally, I think one of my videos that took off, I made it, and I look back now and I'm so embarrassed at the quality of it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And I was leaving for vacation, and my phone I get all these notifications. I'm like, what the hell is this? What is going on? And all of a sudden it was all about the Chris Watts. Is this the email that started it all? And
so you
it's just been
weren't
growing.
doing YouTube prior to that either.
Not really. I mean, I had kind of some travel blogs. I just thought it was kind of, cool. In my job that I do, obviously, is criminal defense. Some days I just want to not think about anything related to crime at all, and something to distract me. And I, started watching videos on YouTube, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I was going to go on a trip, and so I'm like, oh, I'll just kind of make a little podcast for me, and maybe my kids if they want to watch it or something. And literally, a friend of mine said, you should just make a comment. I'm like, what? No one's going to care what I have to say. And bam, there it went.
It's crazy because I've seen a lot of YouTubers that came on the scene during Chris Watts. And with you being one of them, I just remember you coming on the scene and it was like authority. Like, someone who knows the law is now talking about Chris Watts. So it was like, it's funny how everybody, kind of came together and offered their own little angle to the case,
Yeah. Well, and what was interesting about Chris Watts is literally it's just up the street from, my office.
Right, right. And you were local.
Frederick is right there. I mean, I knew a lot of the players, and it was Colorado law, so I could really kind of anticipate, and I knew, and the one thing I think was kind of interesting was they said, they set up for a status conference. I remember thinking, well, they're either trying to get a new date without having to go to court, or there's going to be a guilty plea entered. And
there you had it.
Sure enough, I was right on that one. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Chris Watts was a case that so many people want to talk about. Even today, people still want to talk about it. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't want to hear another word about Chris Watts."
But they still talk about it too.
But
those people.
But they still watch it because it's so. Yeah. It is a case that just, I think, captivates so many people. One, because here's a guy who looks like he's kind of living the American dream. You throw in a little adultery. you throw in this family and a man, somebody that can kill their kids is just people. It's
Right.
unthinkable. People just don't fathom that.
In the way
And
he disposed of his children too is just
and the way he disposed of the children was the worst. And then I think so many people wanted to see how things shake out in a course of a trial, and we never got that.
we never got it. And
And
now we've gotten all these different confessions and things from him.
yeah, and it's the kind of thing where people literally need closure when somebody sees that, and whether they know the person or not. It's they need that closure. I've seen it in my own practice over the years where victims' families, even my clients' families, sometimes they need that closure of what really happened. And
Right.
with a trial, you get a pretty close version of something that happened. And and I think what a lot of people get wrapped around the axle is sometimes the man admitted to killing his wife and children and an unborn child. Does it really matter how or when? Was it in the upstairs or was it in the car? People want to know
Well-
that, but for under the law, it doesn't really matter.
Right, right. For true crime followers, we want to know every little detail.
Sure.
We want to know what led up to this and what led up to that. Yeah, but it's a crazy case, I think, because when I first heard they were missing, I started looking at social media and I found Shanann's Facebook. And it was like this encyclopedia of their life. Like there were so many videos and so many pictures. If you felt like you were stepping into their life. And I think that's what changed it for a lot of people as far as, social media. Chris Watts took social media by storm, I think more so than any other case. But then on the other hand, there's people that I meet that have never heard of it. But those people aren't active on social media.
Yeah.
So-
That's true. And then I think the social media is the key because, you hear about crime all the time on TV, but literally, like, oh, that's too bad. You see the picture put up on the newscast, but here people could actually go see and listen to Shanann talking about her work, her family, her kids.
The videos of those girls and
Yeah. And whether you liked it or not, that was the reality. That was it.
Yeah.
And you could
Yeah.
see it and say, yeah, I could be friends with her, or
you could relate with them, you could.
yeah, and they had everyday issues. They're trying to put on the the front that everything's okay, but let's face it, who doesn't know people where the ship is absolutely sinking, but everything's fine, everything's okay here.
Right, right. And I think with her multi-level marketing as well, that was part of the selling aspect of the product she was selling was, if you buy my product, you'll have a life like me. And her life was seemingly perfect. It really was.
Yeah, that was certainly what she was, trying to portray, and oftentimes life does not always. Social media, that's what they call it, fake book. Sometimes is that it.
Yeah, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
many people these
And
days just.
I think that also the social media has really hindered both families from having any type of closure and moving on. I think that the YouTube, it's been kind of a zoo as far as the two families go, and really putting that division between those families, and people that don't even know them are involved, in that divide. It's your team Watts or your team Rusek, and that's it. So that's been kind of, and that bothers me because I really feel like these people really need to have some peace. And I don't know how they'll ever find it with what happened, but I think it's even harder when you have, hundreds of people on a social media platform in the middle of that.
Yeah, and I completely understand, the kind of the true crime where everybody wants to get down to the nittiest details. And I've mentioned this on my videos before as well, that you can agree to disagree, but you can do it respectfully. You don't have to call these people names and, oh, they're this and they're that. You can say, all right, these are the facts, all right? And what reasonable inferences can be drawn from that evidence or the lack thereof? But it doesn't mean you have to get personal. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, I get I don't know, people sometimes, you get comments, I get comments,
Oh yeah.
and I look at the comments, and obviously I like the ones where people are nice, and other people are like, "Oh my God, your tie sucks. You suck. I think your mouth is dry today. Did you smack your lips?" I mean, no matter what you do, somebody is going to be
Oh yeah. You can't
judgmental.
please them all. You can't please
Is
them
going to
all.
be judgmental of it, and I get that, but it's the kind of thing where it's like, man, these are just the facts. Let's just talk about it and be polite. We can disagree, but everybody's looking for the same thing, the truth.
Right, right. And for some reason, everybody's really sensitive about this case, right? I mean, we've talked about all these different murderers and the victims, no problem. But everybody's very sensitive of what you say and how you say it when it comes to this case.
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of like people pick sides, and that's it.
They've made it personal.
But exactly, and I mean, the reality of it is the man pled guilty, admitting what he did, and I understand the details and who may or may not have had some participation in it. That'll forever be unknown unless somebody writes a book or gets an interview with Nicole Kessinger. I'd love to talk with her. I never have. I mean, I've been accused of representing her. I've been, you name it. But it's the kind of thing where I'd love to talk to her and see what really happened.
I know. I think all of us would love to hear that. So get on it.
I've sent a letter to her. She's never responded.
Did you?
Yeah,
Really?
I've sent a letter saying,
I
"Hey."
don't blame her, though. I mean, I wouldn't want to come out in the public either. A lot of people, I think, criticize her for, going into hiding. But, I mean, I have to say I might do the same thing.
Everybody has a story, and everybody has a reason for what they do, and their past experiences make them who they are today. And yeah, I mean, who's to say, oh, I would never do that? As I get older, when I was younger, things were always very black and white. This is it. And there's a lot more gray as you get older. And, if she wants to, she's probably looking at this and saying, oh my God, I was dating a killer. What if that had been me? And in the same token, oh my God, did I set something in motion? I mean, she's got to live with that.
She does.
And maybe, she was, joking, hey, wouldn't it be great if we just start over? What? I mean, who knows exactly? I mean, we know what some of the conversations.
Everything she said to him, was it something that I said that sent him, to that point, that got him to that breaking point?
Yeah. And, obviously she did not present well in a lot of those interviews, and that didn't help her. She probably had no idea that the DA was going to release the discovery when they did. But I mean, that was couple of the worst interviews I've ever seen, and I've watched and listened to thousands of witness interviews over the years, and that one just did not come across well for her. And
her demeanor was odd to me. I would have been, if I was being interviewed by the FBI because some guy I was seeing just murdered his family, I would be so scared. She was very, very confident and, had this confident demeanor about her. And it just, that surprised me actually, because I probably would have been scared, in tears. I don't know. I guess you really don't know until you're in that position.
Yeah. And then the police allowed the dad to be in the interview. I mean,
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
I cannot say I've ever seen that except for maybe a juvenile
I was going to ask you what you thought about her dad going with her and kind of, butting in. He wasn't just there to hold her hand. He was there trying to control things.
Yeah. And he, for lack of a better term, he did. And I've never seen anything like it. I've been as an attorney like, oh, we'll talk, but I'm going in. Or, if that was my daughter, I would try to do the exact same thing. And they'd probably say, well, no, but we need to listen to what she has to say. And I'd be like, okay, well, then you're not going to talk to me or to my daughter,
Right, right.
So, no, I mean, the whole thing is just weird. It's just a very, I mean, it's a tragic case, but it's so interesting in the psychological aspects of what brought this guy who really has never been in trouble to just someday, become a mass murderer. It's crazy.
Right. It is. And I have actually spoken to some of the friends of the Watts and also with his sister. And they all feel the same way. They're in shock still. They can't believe it. It's just sad all around. It really is.
Yeah, and I mean, and my heart goes out to the the Rusicks. I couldn't imagine having to bury a child, let alone your grandchildren, all at the same time. The Watts family, did they obviously didn't see it coming. I don't think they said, "Hey, go home and kill your." I mean,
No.
how did he? And until somebody's been in that situation, you just don't have no idea how you would react. So, I mean, you got to be sympathetic to all sides of this story, and it's like I said, we can talk about it. I mean, there's some people out there. I'm sure you shouldn't be talking about this case anymore. Give the family peace.
It's over. It's over.
But
yeah.
it's also there's still so many unanswered questions that people would like to know about. I mean,
and as much as Chris has changed his stories or, added things in and omitted things from a previous story, it doesn't matter. Whenever he speaks, people are going to want to hear what he has to say. Everybody says, well, I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth, but you're still going to listen.
Well, exactly. And that
It's
was
intriguing.
I mean, obviously there was the Cadle Gate where she, there's allegations that she plagiarized, and it looks like, it's pretty straightforward. And, we talked to her, and the interview was a little weird. Like, why is only half your face there? But the reality of it is that she was one of the few people that actually got to talk with him. And so what he said to her and what she observed, I think was of relevance because people still want to know, like, what made this guy tick and what made him crack.
Right. The only unfortunate thing about Cadlegate is that she had it all in the palm of her hand and she blew it by some really, really silly mistakes, I mean, she had the exclusive of talking to him, writing with him, visiting him, and something as silly as, sources and copying someone else's work, ruined it. That's what's frustrating because I don't know if he'll talk to anybody else again. That might have been a chance that went by the wayside now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think he's going to be completely suspect of everybody's motives if they are in fact writing to him. There's talk that he's got a fan club, so to speak.
Don't they all?
I'd still love to talk with him and interview him just to see but I'd be straight up forward with him, like, hey, let's talk. Let's just tell it how to. What's the worst going to happen to you? They send you to prison for the rest of your life. I mean, there's not anything you can say.
Yeah.
But it's. I've had cases where people have done horrible things, and it's so obvious that what was alleged took place, and they'll just deny it to the bitter end. Mm-hmm. Those just like, you can't rationalize with them. Like, it never happened. Well, yeah, it did. It did happen, and this is it. But they won't want to admit, or they want to, for their family or for their own ego, so to speak, they just can't. They won't admit that actually something happened, even though the evidence is right there. And it's like just tell us what you did. And I have to believe, pieces have come out. I think it's pretty accurate based upon what he said and what he told the detectives in the FBI in the subsequent interview when he was in prison. But I so wish the judge would have just asked during his guilty plea, tell me in your own words what you did. That would have just summed it up right there.
A little bit.
Summed it up. So
it would have been something.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, actually.
Okay.
So when this happened, did you ever consider reaching out to Chris and offering up a defense for him?
I can tell you that when I put my channel up, friends and friends of the family contacted me. And at one point, I was contacted by the family. And I didn't go speak with him simply because they did not have the financial resources to do anything, i.e., for representation to pay for it. And I was not going to go interfere in that relationship between him and his other attorneys just so I could say I went to talk with the guy.
Gotcha.
If I had been paid for my services, maybe I would have taken the case. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it never would have happened. Frankly.
What if you would have had the case? How do you think it would have went down?
Well, I've expressed this on some of my videos. I mean, from a defense perspective here in Colorado, the death penalty has not been imposed nearly. I mean, the guy pled guilty years ago. I think it was the last case, and we haven't executed anybody in forever. It's probably going to get repealed. And the Aurora Theater shooter, who I think was charged with 17 people, couldn't even be executed. So,
so it's not happening.
The whole, we're going to spare your life for under the death penalty, I don't think it was really a threat. And, so at that point, it's, just from, yes, and people always get this word. There's morality, and then there's legality. Morally, if the cop pulls you over and says, "Were you speeding?" "Yes, your officer, I was. I'm sorry, I didn't do it." Okay, morally you felt great, but guess what? Legally, you just confessed. And, if the offers basically plead guilty or, whatever, I think when the clients, I always have to have a conversation with the client and say, the offers plead guilty to the count straight up. Unless they're giving you some sort of concession where, i.e., you're going to get out of prison, let's go to trial. What have we got to lose? Make them prove their case to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Or, let's see if we can create issues on appeal. You'd be surprised. Things happen in trial. Witnesses say something. Oh, mistried. Oh, now maybe I get a deal. It goes up. I just had a case we tried 5 years ago. I told the client he got an unfair trial. Guess what? The Court of Appeals just agreed. Gets a whole, brand new trial.
A whole new trial.
Now, obviously, he had to sit in custody for the last 5 years, but, when they offer you nothing.
There's a little bit of hope, yeah.
Yeah, when they offer you nothing, okay, game on. Let's go try and do that.
So what do you think his motivation was in pleading guilty? Do you think it was what he said, that he didn't want to put everybody through the trial? Or himself through the trial?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think he didn't want, this is a guy, for lack of a better, he looked like he was always a little shy from, those videos, didn't want to be in the limelight, so to speak. I don't think he wanted to go through it because then he has to relive it, even though he's probably reliving it every single day of his life.
And he'd be in the spotlight.
And then, I guess there's always the risk where people say, hey, you did in fact kill your wife, two daughters, and your unborn child. Yeah. Weld County, maybe the jury would have said guilty, but, or given him the death penalty, but I don't know. But I think it was more selfishness on his part. I don't think he wanted to be in the limelight. I think he wanted to bury his head in the sand and just go away. And if that was enough, because he said in his interview that the attorneys were like, hey, let's go, we'll mount a defense. And he said, no, it's my decision.
Yep.
So, we'll never know for sure. But
I feel like a trial to him was just too much. It was too much reality for him too. And I think you're totally right about him being shy and not like, he doesn't like being in the limelight like that. You could tell in those videos. He was always just kind of in the background. He was hanging in the background. He wasn't really talking to people. She'd have to tell him, Chris, come talk, come say hi or whatever.
Which
he
patch
was not
are you
willingly in the, he wasn't willingly in the camera like, hi,
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. So,
yeah,
I agree with you that. It's interesting, though, isn't it?
It is. So you obviously like true crime before the Watts case, but
oh my gosh,
what interests
I've liked
you
it since I was a kid?
What interests you? Is it the mystery?
I think it is. I always loved mystery novels when I was a kid. I read a lot as a child, and I loved anything with mysteries.
Yeah,
figuring things out, and going through it, and like you're halfway through the book, and you already have it figured out, or you think you have it figured out, and then there might be a twist at the end. We never know. Yeah, it might be what you thought, or it might be this twist. But The first true crime case that I remember being interested in was the Adam Walsh case.
Oh, yeah.
And because he wasn't that much younger than me. I was born in 73. I don't remember what year he was abducted, but he was around my age. And I remember how scary it was, but on the other token, I wanted to know what happened to him. I wanted to know who did, it was like this intriguing wonder, as well as it was scary because I was a kid, and I love John Walsh. I still just think that man is amazing. And the things that he did after his son's death to, do good and make something positive. And that's what I mean by, these people being involved between the Ruseks and the Watts. And, when you do something positive after something so tragic, you're going to have more peace about yourself. And I think he's a perfect example of that.
Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And yeah, that's interesting. I remember as soon as you said the Walsh case, I'm like, yeah, I remember that case. The Adam Walsh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, it was like one of the first abductions. Excuse me. It was one of the first abductions that, I remember. I was in probably elementary school, and it was the strange, they do not talk to strangers, and they were pounding that in our heads at that time, and that was scary. But that was
I
the
remember
first
that.
case
And then, like, there was in Atlanta, all the young kids were disappearing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, those disappearance cases, I mean, you just like, where did they go? What happened?
Yeah, how did they just drop off the face of the earth? And that's a lot of what I focus on my channel. And it was just by accident, is missing people. And a lot of families have come to me, friends of the family, to come on and spread awareness and talk on my podcast about the missing person or persons. And we've gotten tips that have been called in to the FBI after people watching the podcast. And it's amazing. You don't know who you're reaching out there on YouTube.
No, it is amazing. And that's just, the power of the internet that, I mean, it's worldwide. It's no longer, I was growing up, you had the newspaper in town and you had the local television channel, and that was it. And now you get the whole world in the palm of your hand on a phone. And like you said, you don't know who's watching. I'm sure you have, subscribers from all over the world that, like, hey, call from Australia, New Zealand.
Analytics, and it's like, whoa, Norway. Like, how do they know about me in Norway? But yeah, it's pretty neat.
And you just never know what could, who knows something or is traveling through. It's like, hey, I remember that, or they see a picture or a temp
on several occasions. But the craziest one was actually the Heidi Broussard. That was probably the craziest thing that's ever happened in one of my live streams. Totally unexpected.
Total real time. I mean, that's just
total real time. I mean, that live went 5 hours, but I couldn't shut it down. It was like everything just kept unfolding.
Yeah, but that's great. And that's, like I said, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this is if you think about it, I mean, you were breaking news on a live podcast, in a ongoing, active missing child, missing person investigation, which ultimately turned out to be, a death investigation. But just you and me, everyday people, just bringing this information out there. I mean, I think it's amazing that you no longer have to have a big television station or an FCC license to start your own radio show.
You do it right in your living room if you want to. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I find, too, that a lot of the major media actually follows a lot. I had media join my Facebook group, my podcast group on Facebook. I had Houston reporters in there. They're kind of looking at us, too, because we have all these subscribers that dig, At least I do. I'm sure you do, too.
Oh, I've had, the Doulos
case. They email
case.
you with all this stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. People I've had people say, hey, I live in this neighborhood. Here's photos. Here's an information. You should look into this, look into that. And I mean, it's amazing, the people. And, if you had one police investigator working on it, but you have all these other people who, hey, I got 20 minutes of time here, 10 minutes here, and it all kind of comes together. I mean, literally, people are becoming everyday deputized, police officers helping to help solve cases or to clear somebody's name if they've been wrongfully accused, which is just as important.
Absolutely, it is. It is. Back to the interview with Caressa, Heidi's friend. It was crazy how it all started to unfold with just a few questions. If you listen to it and you hear, I say, do you recognize this house? Do you recognize these names? We found this baby registry. Do you know who these people are? And she's like, no. And it wasn't until, and people in chat literally had seen the house on the FBI while they were raiding, on the news, aerial view. They took to Google, found the house, figured out the address, figured out who owned the house. This is all while I was live. Found out who owned the house, Googled those names, found the baby registry. And then from the baby registry was where we figured out, oh my gosh, this is Megan, Heidi's best friend from camp. Yeah. And everyone, I think, was just like, oh, I remember I gasped. I was like, oh, It was just insane how quick my chat looked up all that stuff. They were just like, boom, boom, boom. Here's this, here's that. Like, wow.
Well, it's, we just did a video, and I don't know have you watched that documentary, Don't F with Cats?
I have.
Same thing. A couple people are just completely outraged that somebody would do this. Let's find out who this guy is and let the truth be told. And it just went here to here to here. And, ultimately.
It was insane to see how they got down to him, and it was all because they didn't like what they saw. They started a Facebook group and all these people started joining it. Okay, I'll help, and they all just got together. Same thing, sleuthing, figured it out. From one avenue to the next. I mean, they were zooming in on the kid's bedroom, looking at individual items to see what country he was in. And I mean,
think about
this is what.
Because if somebody had gone to the police and said, hey, we think somebody, did these terrible things to these cats, the police officer is going to look at it, where do I even begin?
Right.
You may have a detective like, well, it's not in my jurisdiction. I don't have time for this. I'll put it over here on this pile. Maybe they're not particularly savvy enough on this in the computers to trace and IPs and whatever.
Right.
And he just like, man, I got like all these 10 other cases where somebody's actually deceased or somebody's being exploited.
Yeah, they have to put priority on certain cases.
Exactly. So these individuals, like I said, they've got their 10 minutes here and they come up with this. And this person has this. And they literally create a case file for the police. And, I think everybody's of the mindset that, as long as it's accurate information, awesome. So be it. Yeah. It's just people got to be careful of speculating and, slandering and, making defamatory comments about people. That's where it gets real. You got to be absolutely sure of it, But it's still so good. And the fact that, like you said, here you are breaking news and you and your subscribers are helping to, put all these links together. I mean, that's just the power of the internet. I just think it's absolutely amazing. And
it's crazy. We knew that was Heidi's best friend before the media knew that was Heidi's best friend. Yeah. The media didn't know whose house that was. They didn't know at that time. And I got calls from so many reporters because I caught that reaction of her best friend, which was sad, but also just took your breath away. Yeah. When she realized whose house that was. And she insisted, Heidi can't be there. She wouldn't be there. She wouldn't be at Megan's house. It was just all that initial state of confusion caught live. It was insane.
Yeah, I mean, real life unfolding right before your very eyes.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Go figure. I mean, who would have known? It's kind of luck of the timing. It just all kind of came together at the right time.
Yeah, I'm sure there was some luck involved, but the mere fact of it is you were there on talking about it, making it happen. So, congratulations to you.
Thanks.
That's great.
Thank you.
Is there any new developments on the Heidi Broussard case that, you may have the inside scoop on that we haven't heard about yet?
Not really. I know that everybody's pretty hush-hush. The judge sealed the case. I'm sure you know that.
I saw that, and I did see that now they're saying that Heidi Broussard was strangled,
Yes.
and then her fiance made that statement yesterday where he said, "Hey, there's someone else had to be involved. Heidi could have taken herself. She could have taken her on."
Now, yeah, and I heard him say that, and my thought was this: the only way that I think that if that was true, if Heidi would have fought her and won, is maybe if Megan had baby Margot, and that kept Heidi at bay.
Or she was surprised, and like I said, I'm always a little hesitant until I kind of see everything myself to say this is absolutely the way it's going to happen.
It's the lawyer in you.
It is the absolute skeptic of me. Just what I do. I just trust but verify. I just okay. I've just been burned so many times over the years where
right.
So you always get the client that is emphatic that they didn't do it, it didn't happen, and you're like, wow, this is great, and then you get the discovery, and it's like, where the hell was my client? Because this is not what happened. All these police reports
right.
are, here's the body cam videos. It's like, this is not even close to what he told me. And then you have other clients like, man, I'm terrible. I just want to plead guilty. I just want to get through this. And you get this like, man, you have a great case. You did nothing wrong. So you kind of just want to see it for yourself. And in today's world with so much video, whether it's officer-worn body cam videos or surveillance cameras, I mean, I don't know how people these days think they're going to get away with anything.
Anything, I know.
Because if they think a crime occurred someplace, first thing they do is they go and check all the Ring doorbells,
right.
To see if there's something there. Then they look for security cameras. Oh, we have a car here. Let's zoom in on that license plate. I mean...
Yeah, it's just like the Doulos case where literally the cameras followed him dropping off all those garbage bags.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Doulos case is going to be interesting. I mean, here you have a guy, kind of an outrageous attorney, throwing out all these theories before he's even seen any of the evidence, against his client. I personally wouldn't do that. But here you also have a guy with resources, apparently making a $6 million bond.
Right.
He can mount a defense. It'll be interesting.
What do you think about his lawyer? His lawyer's involvement and his wife. Did you hear the story about the lawyer's wife?
I haven't heard anything about the lawyer's wife yet.
I just read this last night. The lawyer and his wife were also going through an awful divorce situation.
I take that back. Yes, she had, I think, actually had accused him of sexual assault or domestic battery.
Spousal rape.
Yes.
Spousal rape. And she got a protection order against him. Mm-hmm. This was, right before, or this was in August of 2018. That went down. End of July, beginning of August of 2018. And then Jennifer went missing in May. Yep. But this woman was saying back in 2018, he wants Sammy killed.
Yeah.
And Fotis keeps inviting me over to have meetings with, my soon-to-be ex-husband to work, talk things through. And I'm uncomfortable with this.
Yeah.
So
I did see something about that early on when he was arrested, that he had some issues with his wife and cases pending. One thing you never want to do as an attorney is, you can't counsel somebody on how to commit a crime. You cannot participate in anything like that. I mean, this guy, clearly he has some issues in his own world going on, but for him to, if the allegations are true, to be involved with a client/friend in the conspiracy so that his friend can kill his wife, allegedly. I mean, that's just crazy. As an attorney, like, that's the last thing this guy he should be doing. I mean,
yeah, and supposedly they were on the phone together while Fotis was dumping the bags. So he's on the phone with his attorney friend, and he's dumping his wife's, or whatever, dumping evidence, and whatever else was in those bags. But,
well, it also puts it into a weird situation for the attorney because, yes, apparently he's a friend, but if, let's say, hypothetically, Doulos is calling him up and saying, hey, I just, killed my wife, chopped her up into little pieces, and I'm telling you about it. Is that a friend talking, or is that a client talking to his attorney? And the attorney can be like, I can't reveal anything. It's attorney-client privilege. And I had a case like that once where I had a client that was spending lots of other people's money, and he got arrested, and his attorney was in the car with him, and they were on the way to go, turn himself in, so to speak. And the attorney's like, I'd love to tell you, but I can't talk. It's all attorney-client privilege. And he did the right thing. He got to spend a couple of days in jail for that, but he couldn't talk. So
I feel like they're not attorney-client, though, anymore. When I was reading about the incident with the wife of, what's his name? Mawini?
Mahini?
Yeah,
Mahini, I think. Yeah,
hey,
the
Kyle,
attorney.
Cut that part out.
Photo Doulos' his old attorney. Friend.
But yeah, I guess around the same time when his wife was accusing him of the spousal rape and getting the protection order, right around that same exact time frame was when he dropped Fotis as a client in the case against him with Gloria Farber, Jennifer's mother.
Correct.
So he dropped him as a client in that case. So would that make him just a friend from that point forward?
No, the attorney-client privilege continues on, and if the client calls you back up for even a little bit of advice and says, hey, let me tell you where the body's buried, he can't reveal that without...
Wow. Okay. I didn't know how that worked.
Yeah, no, the attorney-client privilege is sacred. You can't talk about it. So he could be in a real position, and I think he's the one that's still in custody. He hadn't made bond, I think.
No, he's the only one that didn't get out.
Yeah.
He's the only one. It was $420,000 he was going to have to cough up to get out, and he didn't do it.
Yeah, he's not having a good day. He's probably wondering where his buddy, his buddy Photos is right now.
Right. Left him in the dust. But you asked, I want to go back to the Heidi case for a second, because you asked if there was any new developments, and something just popped in my head that I've talked to somebody who knows one of her siblings very well.
Okay.
And Megan, from what I've been told, is swearing that this baby is in fact hers, and this is a huge mistake. So she's insisting this child is hers. She's telling her mom it's all going to get worked out. It's fine. The mom's kind of buying that right now.
Yeah. I don't know. This is speculation, but I'm going to tell you it's completely speculative. I think that Megan Firamuska, that she's got some delusional type of issues where she probably believes it's absolutely true, but it's not accurate in reality, but they're going to believe it till the bitter end, so to speak. And I can't remember. We just had a client where very similar type of thing. I can't remember the exact diagnosis, some sort of delusional disorder, but there was a much fancier name that I can't recall right now, where they think this is the absolute truth and everybody's out to get me, and etc. So they really truly believe their own stories. Exactly, because they've created it in their mind and they've rationalized everything up to that point where there's just a big mistake. It'll all be worked out. And I guarantee you they've done the DNA evidence. I know a lot of people are wondering why has it not been charged as a murder yet. And they have plenty of time. She's in custody. She's not going anywhere. Let the district attorney do their investigation and they'll charge her. There's no statute of limitations in most jurisdictions on murder. So you think they're just finishing up their investigation and then the charges will come? Yes. Because everybody's freaking out about the no murder. Why hasn't she been charged with murder? Then they're saying there was possibly another person in the car with Megan. Due to the eyewitness, I think, saw someone get out of the passengers and open the back door for Heidi and the baby to get in. Yeah. And then got back into the passenger side. I mean, eyewitnesses can be wrong. Yeah, obviously video's better if it hasn't been altered or in any
Do
way.
do you know if they have video of that? Because I never caught if they did or didn't.
I don't think it's video, and my recollection was it was a neighbor that recalls
That's what I
seeing
thought.
somebody
Yep.
come outside. But people's memory, some people remember lots of things, but at the time, well, was it important? Well, how is it so important now? Are they looking for their 15 minutes of fame, or do they really have, legitimate information? Who knows?
I would be a terrible eyewitness, Scott. I forget everything.
Most people
You
are.
would think, but you would think, like, if I follow true crime, I'd have it in my brain, like, oh, look at that license plate, or remember this, or I would be horrible.
Most people are. If you look at, there's studies where, people say, something happens, pick out the person that did it. And they're even like
Yeah.
focusing, like they know they're part of a study. They can't do it. That's why eyewitness identification is really very unreliable. Then you throw in a gun. There's a thing called gun focus, where people aren't looking at the person that's holding the gun at them. They're looking at the firearm to see, oh my gosh, is something bad going to happen?
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, yeah, eyewitness identification stuff is probably the most unreliable identification. If you look at the most wrongful conviction cases, it's usually faulty forensic evidence. Oh, it was a hair fiber and it turns out to be a dog hair or something like that, or eyewitness identification. It's unreliable. Not all the time, but it can be. It can be because people
Well, if you
become
take
convinced.
that coupled with what Shane said, do you think it's a little bit more likely that he believes she couldn't have done it alone? Then we have the eyewitness account. Do you think it's a little more probable that there was a second person?
It would have been easier with a second person, that's for sure. But at this point, other than someone recalling that there was somebody else in a car, it could have been, I mean, who knows, a friend or whatever, but they were dropped off later or beforehand or whatever,
And we
before
just
anything
don't know
bad
that
happened.
yet.
So maybe that person was in the car, not saying they are, but got out before anything happened, had no clue. The guy that lived with Megan Firamuska, he's like, well, I thought it was my kid, and she said she was pregnant, but I guess come to think of it, I never saw her bare belly, which is weird because I remember when my wife was pregnant, you were always kind of, ooh, let me see the belly, ooh, let me feel the belly.
Yeah, and you can feel the kicks and things like that.
Yeah. So that's a little weird. I mean, these cases are weird. And we had a case here in Boulder, Colorado, a couple of years ago, and I knew I was talking to one of the public defenders that represented the lady, but she put an ad on Craigslist saying that she was selling new baby clothes. And, anyone who's ever had a kid knows my gosh, you can get some great baby clothes bargains because, they grow out of them so quick they still have the tags on
Right.
it. So
Right.
the lady goes over there. Lady stabs her, removes the child from her stomach wound, basically leaves her to die in the bathroom in the basement of her house, and literally like, oh, look at my baby. I mean, and the lady
Yeah.
survived, thank goodness, but, she's had the child ultimately died. She died. I mean, it was just horrific. And you just, so, and people, there's something mentally not right where they think that
Yeah,
they can do
and
that.
that's what I was kind of, talking about on my podcast was, did Megan, was she pregnant at one time and lost the baby? And, that's what kind of pushed her in this direction to
Yeah.
take Heidi's baby. Who knows? But a lot of women who either can't have children or lose children, seems like they are the ones that tend to steal babies. The case in Chicago that happened last year, the girl that went, it was the same thing, Facebook Marketplace,
Yep.
went to the house to do a meetup. She went missing. The baby, I think the baby ultimately, I don't know if the baby died or not, but she did. She
Yeah.
did. She was found. But it's crazy. But to think that your best friend of 24 years has done this to you, has done this,
Yeah.
that's what makes this just really mind blowing.
It is. And and for the means of taking a child because you think that you're pregnant or you want to be pregnant, maybe you've lost a child, and to just be like, oh, I'm just going to take this child, everything's going to be okay, everything's fine. Like,
right.
what?
I mean, and she
What?
had Heidi in the trunk, and they could smell the decomp right when they got on the property that night.
Yeah.
So while we were live, right, the FBI and the all of the police that were there could smell decomp. And what was she gonna do? Like, what was she thinking? She could just but what gets me is the guy that lived with her, didn't he smell it?
Exactly. But it goes back to that kind of that delusional psychosis that these people are in. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's a body in my car. I have no idea.
Right.
Everything's
it smells
fine.
Like a dead body out there?
I'm just
You're
here taking
crazy.
care of my little baby. And they're in a completely different world. And it's hard to explain. I mean,
It is. It's sad. It's disgusting, but it's intriguing all the same.
yeah. I'm sure the prosecution is doing what they can in their investigation to figure out what exactly happened or where it happened and see if there was anyone else involved. And like I said, she's in custody. She's not going anywhere. Do your investigation, dot all your I's, cross your T's, then indict her, then charge her. Don't rush it. That's one of the things that's so much different in state court versus like a federal court case. Federal cases, they build them cases for years, whether it's bringing down a drug organization, organized crime, someone taxes or whatever. They dollarize, then they go to the grand jury and indict, and their conviction rate is like 99%. The state courts, like, ooh, we just tripped over a body. I guess we should figure out how to do that.
We have to hold someone responsible, right?
And if we arrest somebody, we've got to charge them, usually within a very short period of time, because we can't just throw people in jail and conduct our investigation for the next 2 years. So it's got to be quick, or let them go and then come back and do it later. But as any crime scene goes, the longer things go by, evidence is destroyed, it disappears, witnesses' memories fade.
People forget.
So that they have to act very, very,
Pretty
very
quick.
quickly. And that's why in federal cases, they always try to make most of their witnesses federal agents who observed this and saw this because they know they're going to be around versus the guy that's like, transient that's not going to be there for trial.
Right.
So it's, the Broussard case I think is going to be very interesting. She's obviously, the prosecution's doing their job. I'm sure her attorneys that have been appointed for her, I think she has a public defender.
She does.
I'm sure the first thing they're doing is having her comped or sending in some sort of psychiatrist to evaluate her and see, is she even competent to proceed? Does she really understand what's going on here? Does she appreciate the charges, that kind of thing? And if she doesn't, she could be potentially not competent to proceed.
And that doesn't happen too often, does it?
It happens more often than people can possibly imagine.
Really?
There are so many people in the criminal justice system with mental health issues.
Right.
It is, I think most people would be shocked by it. And, most of the clients that, or people that you see in court that, there's competency issues, for lack of a better term, they're probably, they're indigent, they're possibly homeless, they're not on medications, things like that. But it happens all the time. We had a client once where it took him 4 years from the time that we said, hey, we don't think he's competent, to restore him back to competency, to say, okay, now we can finally proceed with your case. It is much more frequent than anyone could possibly imagine. I couldn't give you a statistic off the top of my head, but...
Yeah, I just, I remember I followed the Andrea Yates case, and she was found not competent.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first, high profile cases that I had seen where, the person was found not competent.
Yeah. And people being found not competent happens quite a bit. And usually somebody has a history of schizophrenia or some sort of delusional disorder, something along those lines, but they just can't appreciate what's going on. You can't understand who the players are in the courtroom, the prosecutor, the judge, defense attorney. What are they supposed to do? Most people generally can get that. And in my general experience as well, it's the client's like, the voices are talking. I'm not sure. I'm questioning my competency. Like, oh, really? It's like, as an officer of the court, I can't just raise that. I have to have a good faith basis for it. My experience,
that sounds good, but
my experience is, when someone's truly incompetent, when they're just completely out there, and they become very upset that you're even raising the issue. How dare you say that I'm not competent? And they don't want to go. The guys that are malingering are usually the guys like, oh, send me to the state hospital. I think the voices have told me it's,
Right.
And they're just malingering, trying to delay the process. The truly crazy ones are they're like, I'm nothing wrong with me. I'm completely fine. Everyone, how dare you accuse me of this? And that's my baby. How dare you accuse me of this? Yeah. Exactly. And I bet if people look back, they'll probably look and say, ooh, I guess we probably noticed that before, but they can function in the world. I mean, they really can. A lot of people that are not competent in court can function in the world. It's not just, the homeless guy that you see in the corner, talking to himself or not, talking to his imaginary friend, so to speak, that he truly believes is there. There are lots of people, everyday people that...
I mean, obviously, Megan kept Heidi as a friend for 24 years.
Yeah.
24 years.
Yeah, they can fake it. They can, they're intelligent enough. I mean, a lot of the people are very smart, intelligent, but, mental health issues are such a big deal
not right,
in the criminal justice system. It's astounding. I mean, I couldn't give you an exact number, but I'd say 85% maybe of my clients, usually there's some sort of mental health.
There's something wrong. Yeah, something wrong mentally.
Bipolar, whether it's diagnosed, undiagnosed. Oh, it's undiagnosed. So then they use drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. And they, to try to level them out. Then
they end up doing,
Then they go steal to get the drugs to self-medicate, but they can't keep a job.
And now they're in the system.
It just keeps going and going and going.
Now, it's kind of a little off topic from what, we originally were talking about were the cases, but what is your opinion on the mental health treatment in prisons? And also another question, when your clients are not mentally capable of standing trial, where do they go?
Good, interesting question. So, everybody thinks, when they hear somebody's not competent, like, ooh, they're going to get off. No, they don't. They're going to be evaluated. If, psychiatrist says they're not competent, proceed. They have to see if they can restore them. And so they go off to usually to a state mental hospital, and there's a time. They're not going to just release somebody. Oh, the crime that you're facing can carry up to 6 years in prison, so we're going to treat you for 6 years and kick you out. They'll just keep extending it. And they'll see if they can get restored, usually through medications. Same thing if somebody said, oh, not guilty by reason of insanity. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Oh, my God, that's terrible. He walks. No. All that means is saying you did the act, but your mind wasn't there. So guess what? We're going to go send you to the mental hospital, and we'll evaluate, once again, let's say whether it's life or max penalty is 6 years, they can keep them for that long to try and restore them back to a functioning member of society.
And then they would move them to prison from there? Or they would stay in
No, they would stay there in the mental institution. And what's the classic? The classic case is... oh my gosh, his name just escaped me. The guy that shot President Reagan years ago. Why can't I think of his name? It'll come to me.
Chris something?
I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he shoots the president. John Hinckley Jr. There it is. John Hinckley Jr. He shoots President Reagan. He's basically found. Oh,
what happened?
I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Pause. Oh, maybe there we go.
That was me. Sorry.
Okay. So we have, John Hinckley Jr. shoots President Reagan. He's found to be, basically not guilty by insanity. They ship him off to the mental institution, and here they are some 30 years later. They're like, hey, we think we've got him back to being fixed. We're going to allow him to go home and see his family on the weekends, or, to get more and more time. Can he actually go back into society? Yeah, so they really monitor him. It's not a free pass, which is what a lot of people
think if they get off on insanity, then they're free and clear.
Exactly. They're like, oh, you're just having a bad day. No, you're going to the mental institution forever.
So the goal is with those criminals is to get them to where they can comprehend and go from there with their punishment, that they understand it.
Correct. I mean, think about it. It would be unfair. If somebody's not competent to proceed, it's just inherently unfair. I mean, you want somebody to understand what's going on. It's called due process. You want to make sure they understand what's going on in the courtroom today. Do you understand and appreciate it? And are there people that malinger, like, oh, I don't understand, I'm crazy? Yeah,
right.
Those are easy to see through.
The ones that truly don't understand.
Truly don't understand. And if you've ever dealt with someone or had interaction with somebody that's truly schizophrenic, has real severe mental issues, it's pretty obvious.
You can tell. Yeah, you can tell they're not faking it.
Yeah, I mean, they truly believe what's taking place.
Delusional.
Yeah,
truly delusional.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's Megan 100%.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's. Yeah, my guess is the first thing that's gonna come up is they're going to request a competency evaluation, or the defense is already getting one done, and they're going to say she's not competent to proceed at this point. That's my thinking. But we'll just have to wait and see. I wish I had a crystal ball. It would make it a lot easier.
Well, she sure was making a lot of phone calls during that week that Heidi was missing. She was calling Caressa 4 or 5 times a day to find out if there was any updates. She called Tim Miller from Texas Equisearch, talked to him for 45 minutes. Is there anything I can do to help? Call me if you need anything. I mean, just, wow. I mean, that's totally delusional, right?
Trying to create that, oh my gosh, my friend, even though she's the one that allegedly did bad things to her and has her stuffed in her car. Like,
it'll be interesting to watch this one unfold for sure.
It will be. Are there any other cases that you're really watching right now?
Nope, just Doulos. Well, that's enough. That is a lot on my plate right now. The Doulos, the Heidi case, and of course, I'm always open when something comes up with Chris Watts.
Absolutely. Do you? You said you had a lot of people from the news media following you right now. Is there anyone out there that you really trust when it comes to journalists in the media?
No, it's also new to me. I don't know. It's also new to me. I got all these. I had Inside Edition. I did an interview with them. I had ABC that, had me sign off that my podcast footage could be used at ABC affiliates nationwide. I was like, what? What's going on here? So it was, that was all just by surprise to me. And no, I mean, I don't know any of them well enough to say that, but I would like to.
Are you going to have her friend back on again?
Yes. If she's willing to. I know she said she would. We've kept in touch. One of my my helpers on the podcast was the one that initially reached out to Caressa from a Facebook group. That was how we got in contact with her. And she set that up, the interview. And they've continued to keep in touch, every few days or so. She checks to see how Caressa's doing. And she's obviously struggling, but she said that she would at some point in time.
Well, that's good. I was watching one of your videos, and your mods were saying, how they met you, and they're like, the worst thing about being a mod is all the drama.
They all said the same thing.
Yeah,
I was.
It's funny. I mean, you've seen comments where people just go back and forth of, "You're right. Oh, you're a terrible human being." Blah, blah, and it's just like, people, can't we just be nice? I mean, we can agree to disagree. Just present the facts. Here's the facts.
Yeah.
Not speculation. Yeah. We can sit and speculate all day long, but until we actually hear from witnesses, see facts, see, reports where people have said, "This is what I saw and observed," It's just speculation. And guess what? Speculation is not admitted in a court of law.
See, I like to speculate. But I'm not a lawyer like you.
I know, but a lot of people do. But, my job is...
You have to be very careful. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and whether I'm defending somebody or let's say, I'm plaintiff. I'm suing on behalf of somebody. The first question is, how do I prove it? Okay? It's one thing to say, that person, wronged me. Okay, but I need evidence. What happened? What was the... You can't just say it has...
That's the first question you go back to in your mind. How can I prove it?
How can you prove it?
That's the first thing you think of?
Yeah. What evidence is there? What witness, what document can I present to say that something happened? Now, a witness can only testify in court as to what they saw, what they heard, what they said. Sometimes what somebody else said to them to show the impact that it had on them, but witnesses can't testify as to what somebody else told them. You have to bring in that witness to say, I told this other person. And so, that's why cases are they're hard to prosecute because you need to get all those witnesses. And usually in, true crime type stuff, a lot of those witnesses are sketchy, transient, and it's literally like herding cats, trying to find it. I remember when I was a prosecutor in the Marine Corps, I was stationed at Parris Island, and when, if a crime was committed and it was like, say, against a drill instructor or a drill instructor versus a young Marine, well, at graduation, all those Marines scatter all over the United States and all over the world, and you had to try to find them to get them orders. And that was easy because you could just say, the Marine Corps, order them back. But in the civilian world, if they moved out of state, it's a pain in the butt to get somebody served when they are no longer in the state of Colorado or in the state that
you got to track them down, and
you got to get if they won't accept service and offer to pay for them to come back, you got to go to a judge in that state to order them into court, and it's a pain.
It sounds like
it's really it's a difficult. So prosecutors have a tough job, because they gotta, like I said, it's not what they think happened. It's what can they prove?
They have to prove that it happened.
Exactly. And that's why everybody's always like, oh, so-and-so got off so easy. Well, it depends. Maybe witnesses disappeared. Maybe they don't cooperate. Their memory's fading. Oh, I don't remember that.
Right.
There's so many things that...
Because it's not your job as a defense attorney to prove that your client's innocent.
Correct.
It's the job of the prosecutor to prove that they did whatever they're charged with. Exactly.
And as more time goes by, the more difficult it becomes. Like I said, witnesses die, whatever that person was going to say, not coming into evidence anymore. Like these old cold cases. Those are hard cases to prove unless
people aren't even around anymore, right?
Exactly, unless you can bring, the DNA evidence in. And I did a homicide about 5 years ago. It was a cold case, and it was almost 20 years old at that time. And trying to get the people who collected the evidence. These detectives have been retired for 10 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but what does the report say? I guess that refreshes my memory. And,
it's virtually impossible then, huh?
But, when they have new evidence that comes in via, i.e., DNA, they can retest it and say, oh, now they have somebody live that can then do it. They don't necessarily have to worry. They get new samples because the people that did the original samples are gone.
Long gone.
Or didn't exist, so...
Cold cases are pretty fascinating, too, to me, the old ones.
They are. And I think the big area that is to watch are all these DNA sites, the whole 23andMe, where police officers are given access to these databases and they find a DNA profile that's close, and then they see if it's somehow related to a suspect that's or related to that individual that may be a suspect in a cold case, and then they go get his beer. I think I just saw one where I can't remember if it was here or it was Colorado or somewhere where the guy was arrested in Florida, and the police were looking for the whole 23andMe. They found his brother or cousin. They look at him and say, well, he was here. They retrieved a beer bottle from a bar that he was at. They watched him. Got his DNA from that, tested it, and it tested to this case, to a murder case like 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, it was here in Colorado. And, that's where it's going to be, because unless you've been in the criminal justice system, you were in the military, a lot of people aren't in DNA databases. So when they expand these 23andMe's where they can put all that data into these other sources to compare these DNA profiles to, it's going to open up a whole new opportunity for the police to solve cold cases.
Which is really awesome.
No, it's great because people need justice. I mean, people need closure. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing if somebody's an unsolved case is closure. Like, who did it? Are they around the corner? Are they still here? Are they still doing it?
Right. Are they still in the area? Are they dead? Are they in prison? I mean,
yeah. Did you see the case about the guy in Texas? They say he's probably the most prolific serial killer ever, and it's a guy that he was serving a life sentence in California for murder, and then Texas got him for a bunch of cases, and he's giving meticulous detail of all these people that he had killed, and usually it was prostitutes and things like that, but he's providing all this information. I think they estimate it could be close to 100 people, and wow. I've seen a little bit of news on it. I think we actually did a show just briefly on it, but nobody's really talking about that.
But not any details. But that's 100 people.
But the DNA, that's the huge part about it. Is the DNA is that it never goes away. Hey, God, did I? Hold on a second. That book, did I put it in here?
Murders in the Bank Vault?
Yeah.
I think it's like off the tip.
Yeah. There's this great quote. Kyle's going to run and grab this book. And it was in a book here. It was a local attorney wrote a book about a bank robbery murder that happened, I think it was early 90s, where literally it was a Sunday morning. I think it was Father's Day, where somebody came into the United Bank building. It's a big, tall building downtown, like 55 stories. But in the basement, there's all the bank vaults and security guards and things to get past. And somebody went in, shot 3 security officers there, and took off with an undisclosed amount of money, big money. The prime suspect was a guy that was a security guard there, who was a former police officer, and kind of got away with it. And a legendary attorney here in the state of Colorado was the attorney, an attorney by the name of Walter Garash. Just a great guy. I've met him, had cases with him. Just a great attorney. Anyway, he and another great attorney in his office by the name of Scott Robinson walked the guy. It was a death penalty case, walked him. Anyway, he wrote a book after it. And probably one of the best quotes, and I always use this, I usually put it on a board or something in a case where there is no DNA evidence or no physical evidence tying my client to it, but I think this sums it up. It says, wherever the criminal steps, whatever he touches, whatever he leaves, even unconsciously, will serve as silent witness against him. Not only his fingerprints or his footprints, but his hair, the fibers from his clothes, the glass he breaks, the marks he leaves, the paint he scratches, the blood he deposits or collects, all of these and much more bear mute witness against him. This evidence does not forget. It is not confused by the excitement of the moment. It is not absent because human witnesses are. It cannot perjure itself. It cannot be prejudiced by. It cannot be influenced by suggestion, by falsely reinforced identity. It cannot be wholly absent. Only human failure to find it, study it, and understand it can diminish its value. I think that's
100%, right?
DNA evidence, right? It is what it is.
It is what it is. You can't dispute it.
You can't say, your memory's not very good, your eyesight's bad. It's there. Now, how it got there, was it consensually? Was it transferred? There's other issues you can get into, but I just think that quote
But if it's there, it's there.
And it's such great corroboration that somebody says you did something, and guess what? We just happen to find your DNA there. And when I first started
Just
practicing,
like the Doulos case, all the
Exactly.
DNA they found.
yeah, he's going to have some splaining to do how his DNA and fingerprints got over these trash
And the
bags.
girlfriend's DNA was also in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be his biggest problem because when I first started practicing law, DNA was new and courts were still undecided. You had to have hearings on it to decide if there was sufficient scientific reliability. Now the courts have broadly accepted it. I mean, DNA is comes in and they give you these huge numbers. This DNA is a match, and if it were to be someone other than the defendant, it would be 1 in 656 quadrillion. That's like 20 zeros or something.
Right. Undeniable.
Yeah, it's
Undeniable.
and then the only thing you say, well, yeah, of course my DNA would be there. It was consensual.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. So I don't know. It's interesting and.
It is. I could pick your brain all day long, Scott.
Yeah, I enjoy talking to you. It's great. I'm sure you have tons of other things to do.
Oh, I'm sure you do. You're the lawyer here.
It has been a
I
long,
appreciate
long
you.
week.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
No, I appreciate you taking the time and, really enjoy it. I enjoy your podcast. And, Kyle told me about it that, you she was on the news because she was breaking news at the time. Like, how cool is that? So
I used to watch you a lot when you'd go live. Was it on Saturdays you go live?
Yeah.
And you talk about Chris Watts.
Yeah.
And I remember it was probably back in the early spring. I came into one of your live chats and I asked you something, and you saw my name and you said J for Justice. You were like, I've heard of his podcast.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
It's a her.
There's a lot of people who've done it. But all these people in chat were like, Jay's a woman. But I don't think you were, obviously following.
No disrespect intended, I assure you.
Oh, no, none taken at all. It was actually kind of funny. I wanted to bring it up.